Have you ever noticed that not all emotions are created equal? There are some that we like feeling, and there are others that feel super icky to us. Let me give you some examples of some feelings that are respectable kinds of emotions. Like, how about happy? If I'm feeling happy, I like that feeling of feeling happy. And if somebody notices me feeling happy, that's all to the good. I like sharing that. Or if I just nailed something that I was not sure if I was going to be able to succeed at it, and I was able to do it, and I feel that sense of accomplishment, that feels really good to us. Or the feeling of being cheerful about something. This is like somebody in the grocery store line who will actually strike up a conversation, say, "Hey, I just got good news that I'm going to be a grandparent." That we like that feeling, and we like sharing that feeling. We can even feel okay to share the feeling of sadness if it's appropriate and a bunch of people in our group are also feeling that way. So like if our team loses the Super Bowl, we feel sad, and it's sort of an icky feeling in itself, but all of our friends are feeling the same, so it's like my sadness is okay for me to share, and there's a perfectly good explanation if somebody else sees me being sad. But there are some emotions that are in and of themselves really icky. Anytime that I feel insecure, that's a feeling of really feeling icky. Or if I feel powerless or wimpy, that feels really icky. Or even worse, if I feel abandoned or betrayed by somebody I trusted. Or what about if I'm suddenly really frightened or overwhelmed by a situation? Or how about if somebody made us feel stupid, like if they tricked us in some way? That feeling is an awful feeling. Or if somebody exposed us, we were in the middle of doing something we shouldn't have been doing, and somebody else sees us and we feel all exposed by that. That's icky. Or if we feel disrespected. Now, sadness is okay, but if I feel overwhelming grief about something, especially if it's grief that's kind of a messy grief, not simple to explain, but complicated, like somebody died who wasn't my favorite person, but it was my dad or it was my uncle, and I have all this grief, but I don't even know how to talk about it. That feels icky. All of these feelings feel us weak and powerless and exposed, and we don't like feeling those feelings, and we would hate it if somebody caught us feeling those things. We feel so icky about it that we want to cover up that icky feeling with a more powerful emotion. Let's look at a quick example of an icky feeling and being covered over by a more powerful feeling. Let's imagine this woman. What do you think that this mom feels in this moment? Right, she probably feels horrified, ashamed. I'm a failure as a parent. She might feel doom. My child will die. Or powerless to stop the traffic. Now let's imagine that the cars stop and her kiddo makes it back to safely. Mom is feeling super icky feelings there, isn't she? So her brain instantly switches into a cover emotion, and the nearest appropriate for her situation cover emotion is going to be anger, right? So as soon as that little kid is back on the sidewalk again, what does she do? The anger feels stronger. So the anger shifts the focus away to somebody else. What's wrong with you? I can't believe you did that. I've told you 1,000 times. Do you see how that works? Now, of course, mature parents will recognize that anger, but they won't blast their kid with it. But in the moment, even a mature parent will feel that anger. This brings me to our main topic, and that is the cup and the frog, which I love showing to people because it's such a cool illustration. I think you'll love it. So here's the cup, which is our cover emotion. Remember we were talking about, do you see how there's this angry emoji on the top of this? This is the anger feels hard and strong and sturdy. Nobody is going to get at, to get beneath the cup in this situation. But what it's covering up is something that is like the frog. The frog, do you see how vulnerable this little guy is? Frogs in nature are amphibians. They're really soft. It's easy for them to get squished, and they could easily be traumatized or crushed by somebody. So that vulnerable feeling is hidden under this cover emotion of anger. Now, and so let's say that this is a married couple, a husband and wife, and they're arguing because the husband didn't take out the trash when he was supposed to. So he has this is him and his cover emotion, and here's the wife with her vulnerable emotion and her anger about it that's covering over the vulnerable feelings that she's feeling. And so as long as they are staying in a state of anger, there's a lot of conflict and friction, and more significantly, neither one of them can get out of this situation or this argument that they're having, because the anger is keeping them stuck here. If we switch it just a minute to, I was just talking to a lady who had a disagreement with her sister that has lasted 30 years. So this little tray of whatever that topic of that argument was has kept them blocked for 30 years in a state of being angry, and they can't escape it. So how do we solve this for these two guys who are stuck with their anger and they're stuck in this argument? Somebody, one or the other of them, needs to be willing to set aside the anger, at least temporarily. And let me show you how it could work out to do it that way. Someone can say, hey, would it be okay with you for just a few minutes if I set aside my anger and just talk about it without the anger being there for a minute? Would that be okay with you? And could I ask, is that anger covering over another emotion that feels more vulnerable? I promise that if we need to, we'll come back and deal with the anger. But I'm just curious, is there something going on underneath? So if both of them are willing to set that aside, now it's a conversation between the two frogs. And so maybe the guy will be saying something like, you know what, I felt really disrespected. And I felt not appreciated for all the stuff that I do around here, besides taking out the trash. And so you were making me feel like a kid. I didn't like that. And the wife may be looking at this and saying, well, actually, I was feeling overwhelmed by taking care of all of the things that are needed to be done to keep this house in order. And I was feeling abandoned a little bit because I thought that you were going to help me out, but it doesn't seem like you're helping me out. See, that's expressing what the vulnerable feeling is. And do you notice that I'm doing it in a softer voice? So what happens next that can help find a solution? First thing that needs to happen is for each of them to give comfort and reassurance to the other person's insecurity. Okay, to say, oh, I'm so, and an apology for that thing will be much appreciated. So for the wife to say, I'm so sorry for treating you like a kid. I know that you're my husband, and I recognize that you do a lot of things around here, and I'm sorry for acting as if I was your mom instead of being your partner. And the husband may think, you know what, I really appreciate all that you do, and you're doing a great job of keeping the house together. And I'm sorry that you felt like I had abandoned you. I really haven't. And then it might be a good idea for the two of them to kind of say, the problem isn't the trash. The problem might be something else. Is there a practical solution that we could come up with that would make it easier? So that, like, you know what, it might be better for me to take out the trash in the morning. Would that be okay? Or the husband may say, you know what, if you're feeling overwhelmed, how about if we get one of our nieces and nephews to come over and help us out, and we can pay them a little bit to help us out with the taking care of the housing needs. Do you see how that works out? What has happened there in that solution is that they address the actual thing that was driving the argument. Once that has happened, the lovely thing about this little frog is, even though it was fragile and you felt like it needed to be resolved, if you deal with that, both of them can escape from this thing blocking them. And do we need to go back and resolve the anger? No, because the issue wasn't the anger. The issue, what was going on with the little frog part of them. Isn't that cool? One last thing. Thanks. Thank you. It took a tremendous act of courage for each of the people to take that anger off and set it aside, to let the other person see that vulnerable little underbelly, the little frog that could easily get squished. So it required an act of trust to let you see my frog. Now, if we both end up by protecting and supporting each other's frog, it builds long-term trust. And it's kind of like we become the cup. Instead of the anger being the cup, we become the cup. I know that for my husband and I am very protective of the things that I know are my husband's places of insecurity or frailty. And I know that my husband protects. He knows what drives my little frog's insecurities. And so he becomes protective of that. And that builds long-term trust. But if we allowed the other person to see our vulnerable thing, and if the other person used that as ammo later on to throw that in our face and kind of squish that frog, it destroys long-term trust. So it comes with this solemn responsibility, but a blessing, because it's much better to be somebody who can escape arguing and difficult situations. How do you like that?